The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this point I would yield 2 minutes to another gentleman from the great state of Michigan, Mr. Rogers.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Rogers, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honored to stand here and give a moment of honor and praise to a gentleman who has committed himself to this institution and to his country and certainly to his state. And I have often said along the way that there is, if you ever want to tangle with somebody in politics, there is no better rival you can have than John Dingell. And you better buckle up and show up and be ready to go. And when you're on his side, there is no better friend to have in this House. And it has been a fun experience to get to know him in a better and more personal way the last 8 years that I've been here. And I'll never forget the first day I got here. We happened to meet, I think, in the hallway on the way to the chamber, and he offered his hand of congratulations. And I said, "Sir, do you have any advice for a new member here in the House of Representatives?" And he thought about it for a minute, and he said, "Michael, if you're going to sup with the devil, make sure you do so with a very long spoon." I thought it was the best advice I've ever gotten in this chamber and in the life of politics in the last 8 years. He has always been there with a kind word, an offer for help. And when he's against you, as I said before, believe me, you'll know it. He even had some good advice when we were in opposition to certain positions along the way. But he is truly one of the statesmen of this institution, and we shouldn't forget it. The fact that you can disagree and passionately disagree with civility has always been the hallmark of John Dingell. And he has that same passion as you can imagine him having some 53 plus years ago when he showed up in these chambers. And that I draw inspiration from, to know that you can be through all of these tough and very difficult political issues and still show up with a little bit of step in your, a little bit of hip in your get along, as my dad used to say. All of those years, all of those accomplishments, all of that civility, that, my friend, is what a statesman is all about. It has been an honor and a privilege to know you, sir, in the capacity as a United States representative. You're one of the intellectual giants. Thank you for your service to your state. Thank you for your service to your country.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Peters, is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to reserve the balance of my time and turn over to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
Mr. Speaker, at this point I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from the good state of Indiana, Mr. Boyer.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
I came to the institution of Congress as a very young man, not as young as you were, John, perhaps. I was 32 years old. I was a fresh young captain right out of the first Gulf War, and I came to the institution of Congress because I wanted to serve my country in another capacity. And I was very upset, having seen what men and women do in the name of liberty on a distant battlefield, and then to see what had happened to Congress. To my friend John Dingell, your party had controlled for 40 years, and then the institution became dark and mismanaged, unorganized. There were some bad things that were going on. That propelled me to come to Congress. And when I came to Congress, I then looked upon my mentors. As a young man, I had great respect because I grew up in an American Legion family, and those guys that would be out in the alley at the fish fries and shooing me out of the way because they were drinking a beer while they were telling stories and war stories, they were the World War II generation. And I come here to Congress, and I got to serve then with some of the remaining World War II generation. And upon my reflection, John, as you reflect upon your 50 years plus of being here in Congress, I think about what a joy it must have been to have served here in Congress in the 1950s and the 1960s, when there were so many individuals here in Congress that were of the products of World War II and Korea. Because these were individuals that had truly crossed over and seen the world in a different dimension and didn't have time for the political games. What were the great interests that could help our country move forward? Republicans and Democrats working together, building bridges across any of those divides of which individuals who didn't understand that type of dimension or reasoning or the bridge builders of those policies were the products of World War II in Korea. And I kind of look back to your career and say, you know, it would have been a real joy to have served here in Congress during those two decades. And I got to see the end of that when I was here, and it was Bob Stump and Sonny Montgomery and yourself and others. Will the gentleman yield additional 2 minutes?
Another 2 minutes to the gentleman from Indiana.
And I think about what a real joy. And then I watched you not only as the great John Dingell, is what we referred to here in the town as you led the Energy and Commerce Committee, and then how you also then served in the minority. You are a man who believes in the institution, and by that way you teach a lot of us on how to act, our deportment, our demeanor, our tone, and our tenor, but you also respect the institution. And when you respect the institution, that means you respect each other. And right now, Lady Liberty is weeping. And the reason Lady Liberty is weeping is because we take one of the great men of this institution, and the Democrat leadership moved you out. And they moved you out, John, because you're an institutional man. You're a man that respects open deliberation and debate. And that's who you are. But if you're an individual who believes that, no, it's my way, and I'm going to, or the highway, and I'm going to do it my way, an individual who permits open debate and deliberation of all individuals, everyone here was elected to represent their districts. So we are in equal capacity. But your leadership, John, moved you out. And that was unfortunate. And that's why I said Lady Liberty is weeping today. Because right now we're voting on bills that did not go through particular markups. You know, the Speaker, she didn't, we spend that 10 hours in the Energy and Commerce Committee and do amendments, and she takes her own bill up to the Rules Committee, bring it to the floor, don't even do amendments, so we don't even get to participate in a process. And the reason you can do that is because you move someone out like John Dingell. This is a man that everyone in the institution respects. And so when I will reflect upon my tenure in Congress, I will say that I got to serve with some great men and women. In particular, when I think of Henry Hyde, I'll put him in the same arena as Daniel Webster and Henry Clay, the great orators. And I will put you in the same category as Sam Rayburn and some of those great individuals that have served this country, John. And I am proud to have served here with you.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Peters, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is indeed my great honor to yield time to the distinguished woman from California, our Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
The gentlewoman from California, Speaker Pelosi, is recognized.
It's so wonderful to see the two gentlemen from Michigan, the two newest members on the Democratic side from Michigan, one presiding, Mr. Schauer, and one controlling the time, Mr. Peters, as we pay tribute to the Dean of the House and certainly the Dean of the Michigan delegation, Mr. Dingell. Pretty exciting, isn't it, Mr. Chairman, to see these two new young members to come here to reinvigorate the Congress. You've seen that happen time and time again. My colleagues, as you know, today the American flag is flying over the Capitol in honor of the leadership and service of our colleague John Dingell for becoming the longest-serving member of the House of Representatives. As we recognize John today, we thank and congratulate his family for sharing him with us, his wife, the lovely Deborah, as he refers to her, and his children, John III, Christopher, Jeannie, and Jennifer. Last night, hundreds of people gathered under the Capitol dome as we had a reception on the eve of this historic event at the site of the original House of Representatives to pay tribute to John Dingell. It was an amazing group to see, Democrats and Republicans, new members just newly sworn in, and those who have been here for decades.